Welcome back to No Sleep Teal, talking Jacksonville Jaguars. He's Evan Reier. I'm Travis Reier. Lot to get to on this Wednesday, April the 3rd, 2024, as we record. Evan planned on talking, and we will talk about Foyesade Oluokun's contract extension. We'll talk about some areas of championship caliber for this Jacksonville Jaguar team as it sits here in early April, understanding we still have the draft very much in front of us. But boy, another thunderbolt from within the division earlier today as Stefon Diggs on the move, Evan, from the Buffalo Bills to those Houston Texans who just they won't stop. They can't stop, apparently. It's not enough to have CJ Stroud. It's not enough to have Will Anderson, Laramie Tunzel, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, these other wide receivers that they already had. Texans going to go ahead and throw some Stefon Diggs in the mix too.
Nick Caserio, again, I think I've said it on the podcast before, but a lot of NFL fans, Jaguars fans especially, were clowning that dude for years. And over the past 2 years, that dude has cooked like no one's business. And they're seizing the opportunity. They see the moment. They see CJ Stroud is, probably going to be a generational quarterback for the long haul. And yeah, now Tank Dell is their wide receiver number 3. We were already like, damn, they got Tank Dell as their number 2 guy. It's like, no, now he's number 3. And Stefon Diggs too. I mean, such a smart move, not just for how good of a player he is, but this is a guy that has been the AFC Championships. He's been in the NFL for close to a decade now, 8 or 9 seasons. This is a veteran presence that's only going to help CJ Stroud. And yeah, I mean, you kind of just have to throw your hands up, and say, well, dang. And they only did it for a second round pick. So that's pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, a couple of ways to look at it, I guess. I mean, on its surface, it was seismic when it
Yeah.
broke earlier on Wednesday. But when you think about Diggs and kind of the finish to that 2023 season, he didn't exactly light it up. The Bills were pretty much a disappointment looking at them in the entire picture based on expectations with Josh Allen, obviously at the quarterback position, how that team had been structured and built for that window and that moment. Now you not only had Diggs moving to the AFC South, as we know, Gabe Davis into the AFC South with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Um, I think with Collins and Tank Dell already, you still had John Mechie there. Is
Yeah.
working through some things health wise the last year or two. Can still be a very serviceable wide receiver. Diggs obviously still has something in the tank. And if you're the Texans, you're maybe thinking this is a 1 or 2 year thing. It's the Bills, though, that take the hit.
Yeah.
You would think with uh, giving up Diggs for the second round pick, and then the money part of this that they're going to have to take on in terms of cap space too.
Yeah, I think just initial impressions, we should be asking my buddy Dom about, the insider on the Bills side of this, but that screams to me like that trade, the Bills are going to probably trade back into the first. Like if I had to guess, like this screams like we are getting a receiver like ASAP. Or the other option could be Brandon Ayuk. They now have they could trade two second rounders and that'd probably be enough for them if the 49ers feel like they can't get a deal done. So yeah, I don't think the Bills are necessarily bailing on this season or anything like that, but it is interesting. And I also think that some of that has to do with some of it is speculation, but there's been plenty of social media posts and random quotes and press conferences where Diggs has taken shots at Josh Allen. Trayvon Diggs on the Cowboys has taken shots at Josh Allen. I think that, maybe what we're going to find out later is there was a chance that, Diggs kind of gave them an ultimatum and said, hey, I got to
Or,
go.
or it just reached a tipping point from even the Bills side of this
Where they
thing
were just
that
like, we don't want to deal with this anymore.
this is April. We're talking
Yeah,
early April, and
yeah,
you're dealing with this. We're not even close to another season of this. And then there was some interaction, I think, on social media, even Tuesday night between Diggs and some
I saw that
supposed
post too.
Bills fans.
Yeah.
And if you're the Bills, even with the financial ramifications and getting a second round pick in return, maybe it was just the point of no return for
Yeah.
Buffalo.
Yeah, well, it's the Texans game. They looked alive, and I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that the Jags, if they were shopping Diggs, like if it wasn't just a kind of a private deal or whatever, but if the Bills had, kind of started to say, yeah, like, we're putting them on the market. Maybe who knows? Maybe the Jags did try to get in there, just like how they were rumored or reported to be interested in Brandon Ayuk, but. Um, yeah, either way, this is definitely a huge deal. I mean, we listed off all those receivers. Dalton Schultz had kind of a rebound year as their tight end last year, and they were very effective running the ball as well. So, I mean, that offense is there. I mean, they are, the Jaguars fans probably get PTSD from hearing the phrase "it's built." Anybody that remembers 2016 remembers Gus Bradley saying "it's built," but it's actually built in Houston.
Yeah,
Their defense might still need some work, but they could very quickly get over that hump too.
got an emerging star at the linebacker position in Christian Harris. Brought
Will
in Daniel
Anderson,
Hunter via free agency to match up with Will Anderson where those edge positions are concerned. And yeah, perception's reality, at least from the fan perspective, as we know. We deal with that on a daily basis and what we do. But it is on the surface, it's a very strong look. And I think Joe Mixon maybe is undervalued as
yeah,
any addition that the Texans have made because you go back and think about him and that horrific loss to the Bengals here in
he
Jacksonville
lit
last
us up.
season. And I had, I'm a Joe Mixon fan just because of his physicality. And I had a Jaguars fan kind of clap back at me on Twitter about, oh, Joe Mixon's washed. I said, well, he didn't look washed when he was, running through
In
Jags
Jacksonville, he's
defenders for over 100 scrimmage yards in that loss. So I have some PTSD when
yeah.
it comes to Joe Mixon after the Bengals Jags game last season. So we look at this Texans team, really the division as a whole. It's just been for the Jags, it's been a little bit of a surreality, I got to think, because you don't just not retain Calvin Ridley. He goes to a division rival. And now, as we've talked about, how things have just kind of turned upside down in such a relatively short period of time, especially with what we saw from the Texans in year one of D'Amico Ryans and Stroud and those guys.
No, I think the phrase "sense of urgency" is kind of the thing I think about. Where don't get me wrong, I think the move for Eric Armstead was awesome, love it, and I think some of the other smaller moves like Mitch Morse, these are smart signings, but you can kind of see it on the Titans right now with how they've approached offseason, where they went and got Ridley when the Jags went and play ball. They went and got L'Jarius Sneed, who fun fact about L'Jarius Sneed, his past three starts against Stefon Diggs, I think Diggs has 3 catches for like 25 yards. So, I mean, the thing is like, it's an arms race right now. That's literally like, that's how it feels. The Colts are asleep, but I mean, that's really as things go, if I had to rank the off seasons of the 4 AFC South teams, Texans are clear cut, number one, and then there's a power gap. I'd probably say the Jags and the Titans are kind of 2A, 2B, and then the Colts are just in that third spot. Like they're not really doing a whole lot. But yeah, it is wild, considering that so many seasons over the past decade, the AFC South has kind of been the seller of the NFL. Like, sure, the Titans had some good years. The Jags had 2017. The Texans also, made the playoffs with Bill O'Brien a couple times, but just in general, it hasn't been that strong of a division. This is about to change. I really feel, and some of that hinges on stuff like, these young quarterbacks like Levis and Anthony Richardson. But for a fact that the Jags and Texans are in their window. Like clearly they believe that this is the time to win. And I guess hoping from a Jags perspective, I hope our bets pay off. But
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I get it in terms of it being newsy with the Diggs trade to the Texans, but I'm not convinced it's apocalyptic for the
no, no,
Jags.
no, no. It's
That move. Now, I think Jags fans, the response is wow, and
yeah.
I get that too because some of the moves obviously haven't worked out for the Jags over the last years, but you can't say the Jags haven't made moves. Now,
No,
this isn't so much about the Jags not having made moves as it feeling like the Texans right now are making all the right moves.
Yeah. No,
And
they
we'll
just
see.
yeah, that's the thing is, a lot of the stuff, like with the Diggs thing, he is 30, and he is coming off a season of regression. Again, we had those questions on that relationship with Josh Allen and how that was going, but there's definitely a chance that this ends up kind of being a flop. Because also not to mention that Diggs has to beat out Nico Collins for those reps. Like Diggs has to beat out like those guys are very very good. Like that's the thing is like when you add that a top tier receiver to become part of a trio, it's like somebody's going to get the short end of the stick at some point. And who knows, maybe Diggs is that guy, but no, it is impressive, and I don't want to keep tooting their horn too much, but I mean it just is what it is. I think the draft also, obviously that's a huge part of what's going on, and depending on how the Jags do and how the Texans and do, but that's kind of where as we start to get into talking about like championship caliber positional units, I think the Jags need to have a very very good rookie class. Like this rookie class needs to kind of like they have to nail these, like because otherwise I don't know if the Jags are at any spot a championship caliber team.
Let's talk about Foyesade Oluokun, Evan, the
Yeah.
veteran middle linebacker with an extension from the Jacksonville Jaguars after two very productive seasons here in Jacksonville. Really like this guy, first and foremost. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just solid in every aspect of his on the field work, intangibly, dependable, highly dependable. And the numbers have been there too, especially when you talk about tackle numbers. This is a guy, I want to say over the last 3 or 4 seasons, hasn't had fewer than 173 tackles in
Yeah.
a season. So that's been phenomenal. He did increase the takeaway numbers last season over his first year in Jacksonville. So that's trending in a positive direction. Now, again, kind of a couple of ways to look at this. Are you extending Foyer because, well, some previous choices and things that you've done in terms of personnel acquisition didn't work out or haven't worked out to this point like you would perhaps have wanted to? But I think it's very sensible to go this direction with this guy, even though if it isn't all that common to see this approach.
Yeah, I think this kind of checks several boxes. This is a guy that, in the 2 seasons he's been in Jacksonville, he's led the NFL in solo tackles both years. I mean, he has earned this kind of money. He earned the contract that he first got when he came here. And like you said last year, he was, he contributed in a lot more different ways, like, than he necessarily had previously in his career. I also we don't know the exact details of like how this is freeing up cap space or not freeing up stuff, but essentially he was coming into last year of the deal. If you weren't going to extend him, then like now you probably weren't going to keep him for the long haul. Uh, I also think that when I talk about checking different boxes, the other thing this makes me think of is this is a guy that the locker room really likes. A lot of the dudes on that defense talk about Oluokun. This is a morale booster. This is just a nice, hey, our dude's getting paid, which, Balky and the Jags have not necessarily always been, playing that game where they're like, oh, we're going to extend guys. We're going to, hand out contracts and hand out money and try and make everybody feel good about being part of this organization. I think this is a move that definitely sends us, a positive message saying, hey, we've seen the effort, we've seen it pay off, and he's earned this contract.
Yeah, and you took a couple of inside linebacker types in that 2022 draft, as we know, in the first 3 rounds, and Devin Lloyd, Jason Muma, Ventrell Miller a year ago out of the University of Florida. Unfortunately for him, had the Achilles injury, was
Yeah.
out for the entirety of 2023. But I like it too for the reasons we've already talked about. And also off the ball, I felt like Devin Lloyd, whereas maybe the numbers weren't quite what they were even his first year, I felt like he made strides. It felt
Yeah.
like his rookie season, too often he was lost. He was still trying to adapt to the scheme and to NFL concepts, freewheeled it a little bit too much. You can't get away with that at the NFL level, but seemed to be more solid, I thought, in 2023. And maybe Muma steps it up in year three, gives you something in terms of a reserve that you can plug and play at a couple of different spots. And then obviously what you'd like to get out of him in terms of special teams.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Lloyd was, I would say, a positive last year. I don't really, I don't want to be too harsh, but it was almost a liability sometimes in the season prior. And I mean, if you go look at his snap numbers, he did not play that much in those bigger later games because of it. But no, last year was very encouraging. Yeah, you want to see Muma kind of, take that jump. He clearly is a smart player. He's athletically, up to speed, but yeah, it's just not quite happened yet. And then, I think Oluokun honestly is kind of the guy that you want still continuing to teach Muma. I do wonder though, with Muma specifically, like, he's kind of a roster bubble guy, I think, maybe, especially with some of the newer additions. They've kind of stacked up in some of those other spots, like in the secondary, and we anticipate another corner coming in. Like, Muma needs to have a good summer. Like, I really do think so. But I mean, I like the guy. I want him to be able to step in. And I think part of that too also depends on what does Ventrell Miller look like. An Achilles injury, those are, I mean, longer recoveries than ACLs. Those can take forever and ever to get back to 100%, on. So I think, yeah, like after the draft, the linebacker position is honestly one to pay a lot of attention to, because, do the Jags add any more depth to that? And if they do in the draft, then yeah, for sure, like it becomes very clear that, probably one of Muma, Miller, or a draft pick, could be on their way out, even if that draft pick's a mid round, like a fourth round pick or something.
I'll
So
tell you what helps the linebacker position with the Jags is Derrick Henry getting out of the damn division. It's addition by subtraction, getting
Henry Henry
getting
out
El
mixing in though.
Tractorcito up to Baltimore.
No, but now we got Mixon to deal with 2 times a year.
Yeah,
So,
I'll take my
we'll see.
chances,
I
and I'm on record. I'm a Mixon guy, but
Yeah, yeah. I
no.
also am not I'm not super stoked about, I mean, sheesh, like
We
we've
still got
done what.
Jonathan Taylor too. I know
Yeah,
we
that's what
talk
I
about
mean. Like,
Indianapolis.
well,
He's no.
The Jags have honestly done a good job. I think Jonathan Taylor, every time he's played the Jags, he's had like a good game or two, but for the most part, they've kept him to a reasonable production rate. But I mean, yeah, like, and then also, I mean, yes, he's definitely not Derrick Henry, but Tony Pollard has a point to prove with the Titans this year. Like, he really
Nice
does. He did.
pickup.
Yeah, I mean, that is like they are buying low, kind of on that, like buying, getting him kind of all after a disappointing season. But this is still a guy that is clearly like very much in his athletic prime. He's like 26, 27, and has, 1,000 yards from scrimmage multiple times in the NFL. Yeah, the running back group in the AFC South, as we continue to talk about, is good. I mean, the Jags are in a good spot too in that sense. So yeah, it's I won't miss Derrick Henry though. I won't. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
you're definitely
his
on there.
damn montage for his Hall of Fame
Is
speech
half
is
against the
going to be a
Jags.
lot of Jaguar
Oh yeah.
players
Oh
in
yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, every time I'm with my buddies and we're just watching YouTube NFL highlights, best runs ever. It's half the video is yeah, Derrick Henry trucking, Jalen Ramsey or whoever. So
Yeah, they had company. I'll
yeah,
give those guys that.
yeah,
They haven't been the only ones. They won't be the only ones moving forward with him now
nope.
up there with Lamar
Yeah, that's gonna be wild. I'm gonna
and
be
be more.
interested to see
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun, no doubt. Hey, let's get into some areas of championship caliber for this Jaguars team. Evan, as we sit here again in early April, still got the NFL draft. What are we? We are almost exactly what? 3 weeks from
Yeah.
today? Just
Yeah, I think
about
so.
3 weeks from tomorrow? The
Yeah,
NFL
Thursday.
draft
So yeah.
will take place. So definitely looking forward to that. But pre-draft anyway, and kind of the Texans and all the talk being about Houston in this offseason, especially here with the Diggs news in the last few hours, got me to thinking about the Jags and the construct of this roster as it sits right now, some of the moves that have taken place during free agency, during the offseason leading up to this point. And so I wanted to run some of those areas by you and get your thoughts, or you just throw some in there yourself. And, we'll come back around to the quarterback position, but defensively with Ryan Nielsen coming in to take over that defense. And this could be a part of it too, if you feel like an aspect of this coaching staff is championship caliber for that matter. But what about the defensive line with Eric Armstead coming in, Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, who you hope will get a deal done soon that will keep him in Duval County for a long time? Is that a championship caliber area of this team right now, Evan?
I think yes. I don't think it's necessarily elite, as in like I don't think it's a top 3 unit in the NFL, but I definitely think you can win a Super Bowl with this group. Like other team, like someone like the Chiefs or whoever could do it. Armstead is definitely the big reason why that's now there. Robertson Harris is coming off his best season. Devon Hamilton is down, but we know that guy can be really, really good. And then, yeah, you have two double-digit sack number guys on the edges, and that's as important as any other. I mean, really, any other kind of production on the roster, like any either side, offense or defense. So, no, I think the D line is there, and I want to point out too that that addition of Trevis Gibson, he's not a star, but he is certainly a guy that, he's had a 7-sack season before. If he can kind of take that Arden Key role that when Arden Key was here for that season, not last year, but the year before, and he was very productive as a bench guy, that is another critical thing you have to be championship caliber kind of edge rushers or defensive line. So, yeah, I think we're there. I think we're there with that group.
I think from a pass rush perspective, you have to like this group, right?
Yeah.
I guess my question is there that true first, second, early down war daddy that you need to do a good job against the run? I know the Jags statistically were top 10 against the run in the NFL last season, but when you broke it down based on some of the more elite competition they faced, they kind of came apart in that regard.
Yeah.
Do you get the sense that there's that needed presence of that type of guy that can make you a more consistent, a more relevant force across your schedule when it comes to the run game?
Yeah, I think they need another. Especially, I've brought this up on the show before, but I mean they don't have a true nose tackle outside of Devon Hamilton. I think they still need one other guy. I mean, yeah, Harris and Armstead can kind of come inward and play in that spot if they need to, but that's not utilizing the best of their abilities. So yeah, I definitely think that if you could go get one more big body guy, there was actually a free agent, Jonathan Hankins. I believe he went and signed with the Seahawks. He was with the Cowboys last year. He's like 32. He's the ideal, like kind of interior, like big guy who also actually can pass rush as well. That's the archetype of player that I think they need. Now, getting that in the draft, obviously, you're not going to get the full package really right away unless you get a generational prospect. But I think it would shock me for them to go DL in the first round.
Little
So yeah,
Marcel Darius magic
yeah, that
wouldn't be
man.
a bad thing, right?
That was all that I miss Marcel Darius so much, man. He was awesome when he came to Jax. He's great in that 2017
Speaking
season.
of
So
former Bills, too,
yeah, the connection between the Bills and the Jags continues. It seems like we play each other every year, and it seems like we've got a lot of overlap on roster. But no, yeah, I think they're pretty much there. Interior is and that nose tackles position specifically. That is the only spot where I'm like, man, that's not quite where I want it. But everything else in the DL, you have to feel good about.
if you extend it to the inside linebackers who we talked about earlier with Oluokun and say Devin Lloyd, is that a championship caliber front seven? I guess I think I guess you have to define it too when you're talking about championship caliber. We talking divisional? We talking about Super Bowl? There's degrees to this too.
Yeah, like so if the DL is a Super Bowl caliber, I think the linebacker group is a division championship caliber. Oluokun is Super Bowl caliber. That dude could probably start on any roster in the NFL. Um, Devin Lloyd is a little bit more of, we talked about the good and bad that we've experienced in the past few seasons. He could definitely, take that next step and be there. And then we're at a Super Bowl kind of starting duo there. But even if Lloyd takes that step up, the fact is just, yeah, it's Muma is not shown, he's not really, been explosive or really made the most of, of his opportunities when coming off the bench, and then Ventrell Miller coming back from injury. That is where I wonder. I think I would, I really do think that the Jags will probably look for another interior linebacker. Balky loves drafting linebackers, so I would expect that in the first 4 rounds or so. Just to again, add some competition for those backup spots, and to at least provide some form of depth that you can feel a little bit better on. Because right now, I think that linebacker duo is the kind that if either of them get injured and are out, the Jags are kind of in a bad spot there.
Yeah, that third guy, you got to have a third inside guy and
Yeah.
not just somebody that you throw out there and hope can get it done. You can't hide inside linebackers between everything that's required, not only in the run game, but also running the show, making the calls from the middle of the field, and then also being able to play in coverage. They could use another really versatile type of guy there that they could swing between the Mike and the Will, if in fact they're not feeling that it's Jason Muma at this particular time. So let's move over to the offensive side of the ball, Evan. This wide receiver core, is it of championship caliber? Is it AFC South divisional caliber? Is it Super Bowl caliber in your opinion?
Well, it's not the best wide receiver group in the division, so that's I love Christian Kirk.
What if you include Evan Ingram in that, though? We spread it
Yeah,
to the tight end. We just say receivers.
it, I
It's a little
think
better with Evan,
it's
doesn't it?
Evan definitely helps. Evan definitely helps. I still don't know. I think if you put the wide receiver plus tight end group of the Jags up against the Texans and showed them to random NFL fans, they're probably taking the Texans group.
Because there's a
Um,
number one. There's a
yeah,
proven number one,
there's a
first and
proven number.
foremost, with that group now. And even
Yeah, well,
before it, but
yeah. I mean, Nico Collins was kind of there. Like he
right.
kind of looked like the entire package. So that's the problem is that the Jags have Christian Kirk is fantastic at what he does, but he does not do it all. Gabe Davis is fantastic at what he does, these long balls, but he doesn't do it all. Evan Ingram is also, really, really good. And they know how to utilize him with those crossers and everything. But
What
yeah,
if I
there's just
throw what if I throw Etienne in there too as a receiver, Evan? I'm trying to get everybody into the
oh
pool. Have you
man.
have you
Wow.
figured that out now?
Well, if Etienne counts as a receiver, then Tank Bigsby's our starter, and that's a problem. But a starting running back. But no, I think it's the second best group in the division, and I think we can still say it's division championship quality. The lack of a number one. And you know what? If they trade up and they go grab Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. or who somebody like that, then at that point, if they go get a top prospect, receiving prospect in this draft, then yeah, I would go and put them back up. I would say they're 1A 1B with the Texans at that point. But as things stand right now, I just have a hard time saying that this is a Super Bowl caliber receiving core, even with Ingram counting, and even with what Etienne can do out of the backfield as a receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You got to be more explosive than you were last year. And just
You,
on paper right now, you don't look like, from a personnel perspective, you're equipped to do that. So, and we can have the discussion too about the offensive brain trust and how that kind of changed over the last 12 months and maybe how that's impacted things
yeah.
as well. What about the offensive line, Evan? Where do you look at it in terms of championship caliber? Some moves that were made this offseason, I think, were pretty positive. But even with those going into this draft, how do you see that?
I think where I'm at there is I think it's actually going to surprise people how good this line is, and I think Mitch Morse is going to be that hinging point because the thing is Ezra Cleveland came in last year, kind of midway through the season, was a little bit banged up himself, didn't look that great, but overall, when you go look at his, his past seasons and different stuff, he's clearly a starting caliber guard in the NFL, and the Jaguars organization clearly likes him a lot to bring him back.
They're
Sure,
banking on that to extend him, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
going more on the previous sample size than even what they saw with him last
Yeah,
season.
absolutely. Like if they were going based just off how we played last year, I don't think they would have brought him back. But they clearly believe in this guy. Morse is a one-time Pro Bowler, a legitimate center. The Bills organization was, or the Bill fan base was sad to lose him. Scherf, Brandon Scherf. I mean, it's frustrating because it seems like every time the Jags make a move for a high-profile player like that and pay him very big money, it just doesn't really pan out. And right now, that's how I would feel. I wouldn't call him, good. At least not like what we saw last year. And the same kind of, I mean, Cam Robinson is a I would say it might be too much to say a top 10 tackle in the NFL, but I think maybe top 15 is fair.
Top
And
half of the league, yeah.
top half of the league, and then Anton Harrison as well. I mean, very, encouraging signs last year. Obviously had his issues, but I would say for the most part, you didn't see that rookie season and go, oh, geez, we missed, like we whiffed.
No, I
Like,
felt like he was solid for a rookie in that spot where they got him, you know?
and I'm also, no, I don't believe this with every positional group or even both sides of the ball, but I do think that stability and consistency year to year is better for an offensive line. I think now that this group, other than Morse, has all kind of played a season together, they're going to have an off season together. I want to believe that, we're going to see things kind of work out a little bit better. And, not to mention, too, that this group has better depth than it did in recent years. Fortner was terrible last year, but at least now in a backup spot, I'm very happy with Luke Fortner as a backup. Like I'm like, that's great. Walker Little as a backup, that's awesome. I would even say Chandler Brewer, the veteran journeyman. I would say that's another guy that I'm like, yeah, like awesome. That's a guy that I'm happy to have as a backup guard. So, now you've kind of got, a starting five that's at least solid, or at least like it shouldn't be terrible. It should be mediocre at worst. And then you also have, a backup tackle you can feel good about, a backup center, and a backup guard that you can feel good about. So I think the group is definitely division quality. I don't think I don't think this group is necessarily the best in the division, but I definitely think they're AFC South champ quality.
I think they're gonna be better, I agree with you. I think that tackle to tackle, maybe as good a group as they've had in a few years at least. And it starts, as you said, with more stabilizing force right there in the middle. That helps the confidence of everybody involved too. That helps Trevor. That helps the rest of the offensive line because this is a guy who's seen it all. He's dealt with it all, and he should be that sort of presence
I was actually going to say we actually I forgot to bring up the secondary. We didn't do
on
the
the
secondary.
defensive side. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good one. I probably purposefully skipped that one because right now I think I might have known what your answer is. But let's go back there and we'll get to the quarterback position after this. But go with it. The defensive backfield with the departures, Rayshon Jenkins moving on, some of the movement we've seen back there, Darnell Savage coming in, can
Ronald Darby.
Antonio Johnson step up? Uh, you know what you've got in Andre Cisco at this point. I think you feel the same way about Tyson Campbell, right? And obviously, maybe as it relates to even the news of the day with Stefon Diggs, does it change or solidify your approach to the first round? Like if you were going into today and you're the Jags thinking we're going corner, that type of position in the first round with what you heard today, does that just solidify things?
Yeah, I think either it really feels like the Jags can't afford to not go corner or receiver in that first round. When we break down this group, Antonio Johnson is encouraging, but again, that is a bit of a gamble to be like he's going to be our starting strong safety. I mean,
Or your
he
starting slot corner.
yeah, well, and that's the thing is like he's supposed to. The idea is that Johnson and Savage are going to be able to kind of swap off on the nickel and the safety spot. Um, I am curious to see that in action. I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of that flexibility, but yeah, I want to see that in practice before I kind of make a judgment call on it. But I really do like the Darnell Savage addition. He has been a strong aspect of that Packers defense before he got here. And I also like the Ronald Darby addition. I really hope that Ronald Darby is not the starting corner opposite of Tyson Campbell. When we get into the season, I don't anticipate that being the case, but at the very least, I like him as a backup or an occasional starter. And like you said with Cisco, what you're getting. He's got his flaws. But at the same time, he does have a knack. He has a nose for the ball, and he also likes to lay a dude out every now and again, which we all appreciate. So, yeah, the group is not elite by any means, but it's definitely I have to feel better, and part of that is not just because of the additions, but stuff like Tyson Campbell had such a sour season last year that it has to be better, right? I mean, it has to be. So yeah, it's definitely kind of the weak link on the defense, I would say, but I wouldn't call it a liability area, at least not as things currently stand, and especially not if they go add a talented corner in that first or second round.
So let's get back to offense as promised. As narratives shift and change so quickly as they can in the National Football League, the quarterback is often central to that sway in momentum, one way or the other. And I think that's where we find Trevor Lawrence at this point in his career. We talk about that window for the Texans and for the Jaguars and that rookie contract for the quarterback. That's where the Texans have the luxury right now. They're so early on in Stroud's
No,
deal,
3 years.
and how it
Yeah.
was going to free them up in this next couple of years. Uh, Trevor Lawrence, he's already won a division, right? As a starting
Yeah.
quarterback. So we know that he has checked that box. I think with Trevor, it's more about the bigger of pictures, which is the NFL championship, the Super Bowl championship, or at least an AFC championship, getting the Jaguars on that stage. Um, where do you sit with Trevor right now?
I think, man, I think he is division champ quality until further notice. I really want to believe that he's Super Bowl quality. I want to believe, and as on paper, all the tools, all the different stuff, he's got everything to not just be a Super Bowl, quality quarterback, but a guy who can carry a team. But we have yet to see him put it all together like comprehensively. We've seen him flash, we've seen him have really good games. We have not seen him do it end to end, for an entire season. And yeah, I think right now he's just stuck on that hump, and that's okay. That's fine. I think that's not a bad place to be. And with the Jaguars' history of quarterbacks, since Mark Brunell and David Garrard, it's kind of like we're happy with that. That's okay. But at the same time, it is kind of a weird sitch. And we also have the whole thing of, is he going to sign an extension this offseason? It doesn't seem like it, but also you keep hearing rumblings that they're trying to get that, but I don't see what motivation he has to sign an extension right now when he can, potentially bet on himself and ball out this year. Um,
He
yeah, I
still
mean,
has the team option too, right?
yeah, they've got
They'll
him for
make
2
that call
years no
pretty
matter.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah, they if they don't, yeah, I mean they're fine in that sense. They do have kind
Get
of
Josh Allen done first, I would
yeah,
think.
the
And
guy they better, but no, I think that's where Trevor's at. I like Trevor a lot. I really want to believe that he is the guy. But right now, yeah, division champ, and he's kind of hard stuck there until uh until we see otherwise.
I think if you're a Jags fan, what you'd like to see is an elimination of any excuse for him not to be the guy other than the fact that he just isn't the guy,
Yeah.
right? You'd love to see all the pieces around him be what they need to be, like what Tua has gotten in Miami, like we're seeing with CJ Stroud now. And there's a couple of different ways to look at that. I think one of the old school ways is to say, look, this guy's a franchise quarterback. He's a championship caliber quarterback. So if we just give him good enough pieces, he should be able to lift the play of those around him. Now, I think that's a little bit antiquated at this point. I think that's more applicable to college football. Like if you have one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in college football, you can absolutely expect him to lift everybody else up around him to that point. Not as easy in the National Football League. So, and also as we talked about, the brain trust, the dynamic with Press Taylor and Doug Peterson, and is he getting what he needs out of that? It seemed like he got more of it 2 years ago than he got last season. And on
Yeah.
Trevor's behalf, there's accountability. There are still 3 years or whatever into this thing, too many inexplicable turnovers, too many inexplicable moments that aren't just momentum changing moments. I mean, they're game changing moments.
Yeah.
They can
Game
be
deciding.
season defining moments. And that's some of the stuff you'd like to see fade into the black a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we are, in a lot of ways, we are that Chargers second half away from being in a far different position with Trevor Lawrence. I do kind of believe that. I mean, I don't think that what I mean by that is not that like, oh, the Jags would be going for a different quarterback going into the 2024 season. But what I would say is all the talk of an extension, no, that wouldn't be happening. It would be more of like Trevor's last chance is 2024. If he didn't pull that off, and they didn't also, have a decent game against the Chiefs, which again, offensively though, it wasn't that great. Yeah, it's also like you said, there's so many like names in the mix. Like there's all these, like there's passing game coordinators, there's QB coach, there's all this different stuff, and then you also have but our receivers we don't have a number one, and the running back group is they're fumbling, you can't really trust them, and the offensive line you can't really trust. It's like it makes it really difficult to, properly judge what is Trevor's fault, what is not Trevor's fault. But the fact of the matter is that this was a first overall pick, and this is a guy that is supposed to be like
Championship
lifting
caliber.
lifting
Yeah,
everybody else up.
it's
You're
true.
supposed to be able to win with this guy no matter who you have around him. And that puts an immense amount of pressure on Trevor, and I'm very understanding of that. And like I said, I want him to be the guy. But we haven't really seen that. There have been games, there have been moments where he's lifted it up. There's also, like you said, been moments where it's kind of on his shoulders, like that loss or that, specific turnover or whatever. It's like, you can't really look at anybody else. That was on Trevor.
It right now, it's I think viewed as this sort of half season lightning in a bottle
Yeah.
run from 2022,
Two. Yeah.
as much as it is. Oh yeah, there's been this sort of build up to Trevor Lawrence becoming one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And so, with that in mind, yeah, I think it's TBD. It's still to be determined. And especially with this shift to the Texans now, it is CJ Stroud's ball right now. And it's going to be on Trevor and this franchise, this organization to take it back. But as we know, in the NFL, it starts right there at the quarterback position.
CJ Stroud having the season he had last year was the worst possible. Like, while Trevor was also having the season he was having, worst possible juxtaposition for Trevor. Just because, like, man,
Because
like,
CJ was doing things that veterans do, and he was not doing things like rookies do. And that wasn't Trevor last
at
season.
all.
Trevor was still doing some rookie stuff.
And that's the thing is like, you know, to kind of
Where's the growth? Yeah.
regress in year three while the rookie down the road is, like you said, looking like he's been in the NFL for a decade. It just really highlights like you've got to get there. They've got to figure it out,
Maybe
whatever that
that's
looks
what
like.
he and this team need, this
Yeah,
organization need.
a
Maybe
push. Yeah, yeah.
maybe they took that breath. Hey, we made it. we're here. We're gonna be here.
Well,
And
and
then just
Doug,
like that, you're not.
the thing is too is I'll say this, like Peterson's experience with the Eagles is somewhat encouraging in this arms race situation because those NFC East division teams were generally pretty good at that point in time. Like the Cowboys were, winning, they were in the race for the
Yeah,
division
he's
title.
no
Uh, the
joke. Yeah.
the Giants still had Eli, kind of or I think maybe it just moved on from them. But the Giants had competitive teams with Saquon Barkley and different stuff like that around that same time. So, um, you know, Doug has, won in tough divisions before. So that's an encouraging sign. But again, I don't, I don't feel like we're matching the Texans pace in general. So, as we focus on Trevor a little bit, yeah, it is there is a lot of pressure on. There was already a lot of pressure. The fact that you are no longer kind of able to kind of take your time. If CJ Stroud had played to Will Levis's level or Anthony Richardson's level when he was on the field, everybody would be like, it's fine. It's okay. It's all right.
And the Jags would be back-to-back AFC South champs.
It'd be whatever. Everybody would be like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is okay. It's no
But he
big
did
deal.
not.
But that did not happen. They collapsed, and Trevor was a big part of why they collapsed. He just didn't play that well down the stretch. So, yeah, it is going to be. I mean, there is so many
And
questions.
Trevor was hurt. I mean, we
Yeah,
gotta
yeah, he was
we
banged
gotta
up.
take
Yeah,
that into account too.
100%. And and other players were too. I try to be as sympathetic to last year's team as I can because it clearly was a team that they beat some good teams early on. They looked the part, and yeah, injuries and different stuff get in the way. But
That Niners game traumatized me though, man.
yeah, I think it
That was the
traumatized. I
one
think it
that was
traumatized them
like
too.
that was like getting stuffed in a locker in the 7th
Yeah,
grade
it,
in your own hallway,
it reminded you where you're at. It reminded you that
the gap.
yeah, that you don't like that's the thing too is it's hard sometimes to really swallow some of the Jaguars offseason decision making and stuff when you see a team like the 49ers that just for the past like the
He said,
entire
"No,
Kyle
this is
Shanahan
varsity football.
the
This
past
isn't what you
the
guys
entire
are
Kyle
playing."
Shanahan era, they've just been
Mhm.
they've had a roster. Like they've even in the years where they weren't that good, like the 2017 season, they actually beat the Jags in San Francisco, but they won like 4 games that year. They still had a decent roster. That's why they won. So yeah, it's just tough to see somebody else playing chess when you're playing checkers.
But
It's
even
difficult.
even a team like the Niners, we talk about guys that can lift boats, Patrick Mahomes, but
Yeah, again,
they're few and far
that
between, man.
that Chiefs roster last year was the worst. Like it was a
Yeah,
good roster.
right.
Don't get twisted. It was a good
Yeah, but
roster.
relative to Super
To
Bowl
the other
championship
two,
caliber, yeah,
yeah, but Patrick Mahomes is, the next goat.
he is.
As this show goes on, you will learn that anytime we talk about Patrick Mahomes, I am going to say like this is like I don't get how people hate on that dude. I don't get how people try and say he's not that good or anything else. Like he's just fantastic. I wanted Trevor to be him, but clearly Trevor is going to be a different type of quarterback, even if he is able to hit that next level. Despite having that same kind of similar athleticism, that's the other thing going into this next year too. I want to see Trevor. I guess the final point I'll make on Trevor before we move on is I want to see him play desperate and not press. I don't mean like make the crazy throws that caused turnovers last year. I want to see him use his legs. I want to see him extend plays a little bit better than
Yeah,
he
you're
has.
not talking about going pure sandlot, but
Yeah, just
be confident enough in your own athletic ability to step outside the structure from time to time and play football more
yeah.
than you play, say,
That's
quarterback.
That's what I want to see. It's not that I want to see him, force a throw downfield to Gabe Davis. It's not that I want to see him, make a circus play every other, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm realistic. I just because I don't think he can do that either. I don't think he's not consistent enough as a thrower to do that. But what I do think he can do is, I mean, he takes one step forward and he covers 2 yards. When you're that tall, like,
Gazelle.
yeah,
Yeah.
dude. I mean, just literally, he can pick up yards so fast, and we saw him do it in games like that. The Falcons and the Bills games, in London, like both those games, he had big runs. Yeah, it's still something we need to see out of him.
Well, Evan, it's been a lot of fun, even with the Stefon Diggs news earlier today. But as always, plenty of topics to cover, even in early April as we look ahead to the upcoming NFL draft. Anything else before we get out of here, my man?
I don't think so. Just excited for the Masters.
Oh,
Roll
yes.
Tide. Alabama's in
Final
the Final
four, Alabama
Four.
men's basketball. Evan, a big alum of UA, so he's
Can't
excited about Saturday night.
honestly can't believe it. And it's going to
Still
take a
stunned.
miracle. It's going to take a miracle to get through Saturday, but
UConn
uh,
is tough.
they're a wagon. But at the same time, it's a very special time to be an Alabama sports fan. I think in that sense, and then yeah, also man, the Masters is right around the corner. And if
Loving
there's
that.
not a sign that spring is here, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Seeing the
Yeah.
azaleas
Oh yeah.
bloom.
It's this is one of the best times of year for sports. If you really love all different types of sports, this is a good time.
I can hear the CBS theme music in my
And
head right now.
don't forget about the UFL. Don't forget about the
UFL cranked up.
UFL just started.
Yeah.
Birmingham
Yeah.
Stallions 1-0. About to Birmingham Stallions about to win that title again.
I could really get Evan going and talk about, WrestleMania coming up
Oh,
too
geez.
with The
I'm
Rock
actually
and
gonna
all that.
miss it.
But
I'm gonna miss most of it. I gotta work Saturday night, so I'm gonna be focused on the Bama game when I'm at work. And then on top of that, Sunday night, I'm driving to St. Louis. So I guess I could, watch it in the car, but yeah, I'm gonna be kind of in and out of it. I definitely will watch all of it at some point though. I
the
definitely
life
will.
of a 28-year-old bachelor living vicariously
It's
through
awesome.
Evan Thomas
I
Reier
highly
these
recommend.
days. The old man is.
Don't
All right. Well, for
don't
Evan
just
Reier, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us right here on No Sleep Till. And until next time, so long, everybody.